You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots. Here's your host, Ryan Argenta.
Welcome back to the Engage podcast. This is the Tentative Agreement series. I'm here with Rich Wheeler from the negotiating committee. Today, we're going to talk filling of vacancies. That means advanced entitlements, AEs, and training. That's section 11 and 22. We're going to do it backwards, talk about AEs first. Rich, welcome to the Engage podcast. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Ryan. Happy to be here. Happy to go through some of the new items that are working agreement.
Yeah, you're just coming off the road shows. We appreciate that. I know that's been a huge toll on you being on the road for a couple of weeks, talking to the pilots about these things. But one last time, let's dive in. Filling of vacancies, section 22 and AEs. Give me the skinny on the changes there.
Okay. Before we dive into it, there's just a little bit of exposition to talk about section 22. Not really super familiar with most people, simply because that's one of those things in the contract you don't really turn to until you actually need to look at it. There are two primary sections of section 22. One talks about the PBS staffing formula, which actually talks about the minimum staffing requirement for each one of the positions we have at the airline. And then the rest of it has to do with the training postings, including advanced entitlements. That includes AEs, MDs, and VDs, and all the kind of ins and outs in there. And there's a little bit of talk about the training freezes too in section 22. So just to get started, we'll talk about the PBS staffing formula. That's all found in section 22C. Just as a quick refresher, when you talk about staffing at the airline is done by position, not by category. And by position, I mean it is a seat and a piece of equipment, whereas a category is the seat, equipment, in the base. And the formula in 22C is actually really complicated, but part of it is to ensure that we have proper coverage and reserves during times when we are sending out a lot of premium time. If you look under the formula itself, you'll see in the definitions, it's called the G variable. And the G variable, really what it does is encapsulates all the premium hours that the company hands out over a rolling period. And it gets factored back into the number of reserves that are required under 22C. Just a quick piece about reserves required. There's actually two areas in the contract where you'll hear reserves required. One is in 22C. It talks about the number of reserves required in any position. And of course, that's added to the number of line holders to get the total value. You also hear reserves required in section 23V. That's completely separate. The two don't really have anything to do with each other. The one in 23V talks about reserves required on a daily basis. And that's the grid that you look at when you open time and look at reserves required.
So just to clarify this G variable, there's a complex PBS staffing formula. We're talking about in general, overall in a category. When a category has X number of green slips, if the company wants to run that category hot during the summertime or otherwise, every time a green slip is awarded, that it goes into that factor, it goes into that formula, and it says, hey, you need to add additional pilots to the seniority list. And so that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And there's some big gains in that section. And I don't want to go down the path too far in the technicalities, but I think people need to be aware that there's some big gains in our staffing formula in 22C.
Yeah, absolutely. The G variable talks about staffing in positions. So that would be the seat and the equipment. The G variable does look at all different forms of premium time, not just green slips, but also inverse assignments. And also we have some new items coming in section 23, the PBS premium rotations and the silver slip items. Those all carry a premium with them and they all get factored into the G variable. So one of the items that we discovered in our preparation for section 6, and this goes all the way back to 2018, is the PBS staffing formula as it exists today came into existence in C2K. And when it was implemented in a technically correct manner, but not really statistically valid. And so we ironed out the wrinkles in that, and now it is going to operate the way it was originally intended. And it actually takes into account some deviation statistical computations. And when it's fully up and running, it will account for between 100 and 150 pilots additional every year. And so that is going to add up some significant staffing to each position as we go forward. So we fixed the G formula. We added in new areas that are going to generate some additional premium time, and it hopefully will add additional staffing to the categories that need it.
Very good. So additional positions in those categories. Now we're talking advanced entitlements. That's what everybody gets excited about. Those are the sexy items of, okay, I want to go to a wide body. I want to be a captain. Talk to me about that. Because some of the common complaints about the AE is how long the conversion windows are and the lack of control that pilots have over their training footprints. So what are the improvements there?
Right. And that is certainly one area that has been a common complaint is the length of the conversion windows. We wanted to take a multi-tiered approach to this section. And first, we wanted to try to reduce the conversion windows as much as we possibly can, simply because that drives that period of uncertainty a pilot has in their schedule. And also, we wanted to target some individual items where if a pilot has a life event over a couple of days, that they could try to protect those days from the long window. So we'll talk about the new conversion windows first. The common complaint is 210 days is long, 365 days is way too long. And so what we did is we reduced the new default conversion window will now be 150 days, which is 5 months. We've kept the 210-day window, but that comes with new restrictions. At least 10% of the awards have to be as displacements. And so they can't just simply publish 10% and say these are going to be displacements and then not award them. They actually have to be awarded as displacements. So they can still use 210 days, but it comes with a very significant restriction with it. And we've managed to reduce the long conversion window, the 365-day super long bid, to 335 days. But there has to be at least one displacement on it, and they can only use that once per year.
So big picture, everything's going well. There's no displacements. I bid something today and I'm awarded it today. I can expect to be converted within the next 5 months.
In 150 days, that is correct.
Yep. With the new conversion windows, do you think that'll result in more frequent AEs?
It certainly could. Certainly, the company can run as many AEs as they like. That's within their discretion. Some outfits have more structure to it, some have less, but with hopes that with the automation that the company's putting into place, their training pipeline will become a little bit more structured and they can follow up on more frequent AEs where people have more opportunities.
Gotcha. And then I think you're going to go there, but the golden days for qualification training, you talked about those life events. It's like, oh man, I really want to upgrade, but I'm getting married in 3 months from now. And gee, I hope they don't put training over that, or, they can liquidate my vacation. So now you have these golden days where you say, I am not available on these days. Talk to me about that.
That's exactly right. So we heard over and over that people would like to put in for a bid or, like you say, take that upgrade, but just have that 1 or 2 day life event that's going on, whether it's an anniversary, whether it's a graduation, it's maybe a cruise, something like that, where they just wanted to protect a block of days. And so that's where the golden days for qualification training come into play. They were going to work very similar to how the golden days work for CQ. You'll be granted 6 days. You can use them in groups of 2. And these are days that your training footprint may not encroach upon. And that these are designed to act as blockers for that part of your calendar that you really had these life events set aside. So you can go ahead and take those bids and get those awards without it really blowing up your program on those particular days.
Now you get, in addition to the golden days, pilots will also have the ability to bid for specific windows, right? Which you want to be trained.
That's correct. So the golden days were designed to target a very specific issue, which is your 1 or 2 day life events. The qualification training preferences is really designed to look at these longer conversion windows, specifically the 210-day or the 335, where you certainly still have the golden days that you can use, but you really want a little bit more control over when you go to training. So what you'll be able to do is for the 210-day conversion window, you'll be able to preference to train either in the first or the second half of the conversion window. And for the longer 335-day conversion window, you can preference to train in the first, third, second, third, or last third of the conversion window. And this will occur when you put in your bid for the award.
Let's unfold that a little more. So a 210-day conversion window is 7 months. So that's 3.5 months in the first half, 3.5 months in the back half. So as you're preferencing your AE preferences, there will be a section that you can actually fill in. I'd like to go to training in the first half of my conversion window.
What will happen is the company will publish the training slots that are available. You'll put your bid in when you enter your bid, and you'll specify first, third, second, third in the case of the 335-day conversion window. And then depending on which slots are available when it gets down to your seniority, that would be what you'll be awarded. Now, one of the caveats to that is there's always unexpected events that come up. You could have a simulator break. You could have a number of different events that happen. So the company can change your training start date. However, if they do that, you do have the ability to withdraw from your award and simply go back to your previous category. If that's the case, if they say that you were supposed to go to training in the second, third, and they say, hey, we had a simulator fall off its jacks, or we need to push you out to the third. And you can simply say, I have a significant issue in the third. I just can't accept that. So it gives you the right to say, you know what, I'm just going to walk away from this whole thing. I'm going to go back to my previous category. And that comes with absolutely no harm, no foul. There is no freeze. There's no drama. You simply go back to your previous category. And this will be such that you won't even miss bidding for the month.
Okay. So I've heard before, man, I really want to go to upgrade, but I need to train right away because I'm having a baby in 6 months. And now, due to unforeseen circumstances, the company says, hey, we can't honor your bid to train in the first half of your window. You're going to go in the second half, and you can just say, forget it, can't go. I've got a baby, done. You walk away, you go back, you rebid. And that also does not count. We're going to get into this in a second, but that does not count as your one career time removal from training.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And the company often plans staffing for these categories to be very tight, often down to a single digit number of pilots as a buffer. And if somebody decides to withdraw from training under this provision where you can simply go back to your old category, it is a significant penalty to the company because that disrupts their staffing plan for that category, both in the category that you're coming from and the category that you were going to. We feel that serves as a significant disincentive for them to change the training dates just on a whim.
Right.
Now, there's another component to this also is that you're also going to be able to preference your simulator periods. If you're like me, mornings are absolutely ruinous to your way of life. And if you don't like A periods or B periods, even, you're going to be able to preference your simulator periods that you would rather go to. Those will be considered secondary to your training start window. So it'll look at your start window first, and it'll look at your simulator period preferences.
So this is good stuff. So I am looking at the AE and saying, okay, I'm going to upgrade to a captain, or I'm going to upgrade to a wide body. I'm going to put in all my preferences. Then I'm going to say, I want to train as soon as possible because I've got stuff going on later in the year. And I also don't like A periods. So I'm going to bid C periods. They will award those in seniority order, but they'll award those as you go. So, okay, I got the 350 that I wanted. Now I'm going to train in the first half and I want C periods, and they're going to honor it to the greatest extent possible, right? So if there's 10 training events and there's 6 C periods, I'll get the 6 C periods and the balance will be something else.
Correct.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, Rich.
Section 22 is just one of those areas that hasn't gotten a lot of love over the past couple of years. And a lot of issues have bubbled up that have exposed some of the weaknesses in Section 22. You see that anytime there's a rapid cycling of the airline, like we saw with COVID, where people are all of a sudden getting displaced out of categories, and then all of a sudden they flip the switch and they're going back in the different directions. And that's where we looked at pilots who got multiple AEs, and the company decided that they were going to send them to training for every one of the awards that they got. And I like Waffle House as much as the next guy, but I can only maybe do 1 or 2 trips a year to Virginia Avenue. So going forward, if you do receive multiple awards, you're only going to be trained on your last award.
Awesome.
Another one of the items that we also caught with some cycling of the airline is that pilots who had a reinstatement award and they're reinstated back to their previous category and they were going to train. It's actually a very small part of Section 22 that even talks about reinstatements rights, and there's not a lot of meat to it. And oftentimes these pilots would be trained at the company discretion, even behind pilots who had gotten AEs who'd never held the position before. And there's no pay protection due under the current agreement. So under the new agreement, those pilots who are eligible for reinstatements and they receive a reinstatement award will be trained in seniority order, or they'll be pay protected.
Okay. And quick question, going back to bidding your training preference, our current system is you can select during your bid to be trained last.
Yes.
And basically reverse seniority order. Is that feature still available?
That feature is available in your individual training windows. Whichever ones that you will select, you will still be trained first in seniority order. If you elect to train last, you can train last in that window.
Okay.
So instead of just being in the whole global solution first or last, it'll be first or last within your individuals.
So if I want to be dead last, you bid the
Third
third
window,
window
last person to go.
and dead last. Okay. And then also related in our current setup, if someone junior to you is trained or converted before you, then you're pay protected. How does that play out now?
That'll play out within each individual window, same as it does now. The only wrinkle to that is if you use a golden day and it causes your training to be shifted around and you wind up training after a junior person because of the use of your golden day, there is no pay protect off of that.
Okay. So you'll have to watch that
You do,
closely
and
and
it
that's
does
okay.
come with a little bit of a price to it.
Okay. Very good.
Just one other quick item in section 22 is previously the category freezes were determined by the length of the training footprint. And the company was at its discretion to determine the length of the footprint. They had some ability there to tweak the footprint. It could wind up in a different freeze category. And so we simply reclassified that to just the type of training is what determines your freeze. If it's an initial qual, it's 24 months. Difference is it's 9 months and all of the qualification is 12 months. So this is the type of training you're going to. This is the kind of freeze that you get regardless of the length of the curriculum.
Okay. Very good. Let's dive into section 11 training. So now you've been awarded your dream category, your dream position, you're all set up. You've preferenced your bid period. You've got your C period, your banker's hours. Now you're actually going to go to training. Let's talk money, training pay.
That is a substantial improvement in the new agreement. Qualification pay in the past has, and a lot of things in the contract in the past have been based on a pro rata share of the ALV. Basically, you take the value and you divide it by the days in the bid period, and you wind up with a number that is between 2.3 and 2.8 hours per day. That is not sufficient. So under the new agreement, you'll get a straight 305. That's 3 hours, 5 minutes for the entirety of your training footprint, even on the days that you have no scheduled training. Just for a quick example, if you have a 30-day footprint under the new agreement, POTS will receive 305 for each of, say, a 30-day period. That'll be 92 hours, 30 minutes paid during the bid period. Whereas today, under the current agreement, it would be simply 75 hours of pay. So that is no longer a pay cut to go to training.
And now you don't have to worry about AOVs, right?
Right.
If you span 2 months, February and March, and February is 71 hours and March is 77, it doesn't matter because you're getting 3 hours and 5 minutes per day. If you have a 30-day training window, then you're going to get 92 and a half hours of pay for your training window.
That's absolutely correct. Now, there is a provision or section 11F that if you have some additional training days in there, and there's a hyper technical definition, but once you exceed a certain number of training days in footprint, there's a little bit of an escalator clause in there as well.
So you get paid a little more.
You get paid a little bit more.
Okay. How about CQ, in command, other stuff? Currently 4 hours of pay per day. Now that looks like it's increasing.
Right. So CQ is a pretty good increase. It is going from 4 hours per training day to 415. And of course, that also includes any travel days before or after. And on 1/1 of 24, it'll increase further to 5 hours per training day. So that is a fairly substantial increase. The other large increase is in distributed training pay. This is everybody's favorite. You're sitting at home on the computer with a cat on your lap and you're going through your slides and you're wondering, why am I getting 1 for 2 on this? So now we've increased that. So it'll be 1 minute of pay for every 1.5 minutes. But it comes with an actual minimum. So you can never be paid less than 60 minutes of pay. When you get those 45-minute CQ sessions or maybe a 12 or 15-minute supplementary training, like for instance, the new electronic flight dispatch folder, the minimum amount of pay for a distributed training event will be 60 minutes. Now, once you get past an hour and a half, that's when your 1 to 1.5 will start kicking in because that's the amount of time that it requires to start getting above the minimum. So that is a substantial increase from where we're today.
Okay. So we had a question if training pay will go retroactively back to January 1st of this year. And I'm reading now that training pay, including qualification, recency, CQ, distributed training, et cetera, that all begins on April 1st of 2023. April 1st of this year, that kicks in. So it will not be included in the retro pay. Is that right?
Right. That's correct.
Okay.
Some of the other items that we got are a lot of cleanup items, late night simulator training pay, although the company has implemented the done by one. It has now changed from your base time to your simulator time. So you're actually being paid for the time that you're in the simulator in case you're running one of those late night sessions. One of the other complaints that we have heard is that the more you go through training and you are just wiped out and maybe got some animals at home that you have to feed or
Have a lot of cats, right, Rich?
I've got a few and they do take up more than their share of time. But now pilots are going to be able to request 2 calendar days free from duty following the completion of training. And that would be their 4-4X before starting their OE. It gives somebody time just to go home and say hello to their spouse if they're married and clean the gutters out before they have to get on the road to go do their OE. For pilots who, and this is probably going to be more of an issue coming up than it has been in the past, but for those pilots who are doing first time upgrades, if they're eligible for the short course, for instance, if you're in the 717 and you're going from the right seat to the left seat and you just want a little bit extra time in the sim, you are going to be able to raise your hand, say, I need a few more sessions to make sure I'm completely dialed in. And the good news is that's not going to change your freeze. It'll still be based on what you originally were due.
Okay. That's good to know.
We were talking earlier about withdrawal from training. Sometimes situations changed, and certainly in conjunction with the longer conversion window, say 210 days or now 335 days, sometimes life events happen and maybe the flying has changed. Maybe your commute is not going to be what you thought it would be. Maybe you get into training and you say, you know what? This isn't for me. In the past, the only way you could do is withdraw from training and incur a training failure, which is clearly a non-optimal situation. But now you're going to be able to take a once per career mulligan and withdraw from training without any reason. You can just say, you know what, I'm going back to what I was doing. The only wrinkle with this one is that you will incur a 24-month freeze and you'll be going back to your previous category.
Okay. So again, once in a career, mulligan, I'm withdrawing, no harm, no foul. 24-month is back to your previous category, whatever you can hold,
Right.
You're done.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no restriction on how you use it. The takeaway is it is once a career. So if you're going to use it, make sure this is the one you're going to pull the handle on.
Yep. Very good.
We've had a long time involvement with the company on what are called non-traditional career pathway programs. And people might recognize this under its common vernacular called ab initio. This would be a European style program where they do hire people off the street and then they throw them in a very concentrated program. We have none of that support in the regulatory sense in the United States. We have never embraced those kind of programs here. We've always followed the traditional pathway, either going through the military or going through the civilian pipeline, where people don't really show up until they have significant experience. However, this is an important piece of the puzzle in case things change down the road. Not that we're encouraging that. And in fact, our position as a highly qualified pilot is the best safety mechanism in the aircraft. However, in the case that something does develop down the road, this gives us a seat at the table to discuss some of the requirements.
So this is a forward-looking protective measure for the quality of Delta pilot that we're used to, that we want to protect. And this is really like the cadet programs, right? You're bringing somebody off the street, you train them from zero to hero, and now you're flying with this person in your right seat.
That's exactly.
So now the union will have a seat at the table to have some input on how we're going to curate this if we need to get there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there has traditionally not been a lot of support for this kind of program in the United States. We don't expect that to change, but this is what we call sucker insurance, is we want to make sure that we're covered just in case something unexpected happens.
Okay. Very good. Training, advanced entitlements, section 11 and 22. What are the downsides?
Not really any downsides. All these were pretty solid gains, and some of these sections needed some love. And we were able to do that in section 22. And in section 11, we were definitely making some good strides in the pay. And we were able to do some pretty good things in section 10 for the instructors, which we broke off separately. And I'm sure you'll be talking to Brandon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of people will open up the training section and they'll see a lot of text struck out, and it all has to do with seniority list instructors and line check pilots and line validation pilots. One of the anomalies in our working agreement compared to maybe some of the others out there in the industry is we never had a separate section for our instructors and our line check pilots and line validation pilots. What we've done under this agreement is we have removed all those sections from Section 11, and they now have their own new section, which is Section 10. It was a very intentional way to give the seniority list instructors and the line check pots, the line validation pots, their own section for their work rules for the way they operate. And Section 11 now is strictly for when your line pilot just goes to training.
All right. Thanks very much. Rich Wheeler, negotiating committee, took the lead on training and advanced entitlement.
Thanks, Ryan.
Stay tuned for more TA series from the Engage podcast. This has been Engaged, the podcast for Delta pilots. Thanks for listening. My name is Ryan Argenta. Stay safe and keep the rubber on the road.
You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots. Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or your favorite podcast platform, and receive notifications when a new episode is available.